Hey there, Mr. Reddit here. Welcome back to another episode of r/Entitled Parent Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today, Dine Karen gets what she deserves. After that, Entitled Mom ends my engagement and gets me banned from the Steakhouse. And after that, help destroy my trust in humanity? I put you on the news. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen gets put on the news. I'll sue you. So please smash that like button. And if you're new, subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Dine Karen gets what she deserves. My group of friends have been together for quite some time, at least starting from the end of middle school. The majority of us ended up going to the same college, so good for us. Anyway, one of our friends has been acting unreasonably and starting drama for fun. It's been slowly building up for about a year. Now, gossip and rumors we can deal with because we know each other and we can usually pick the truth from the lies easily. At the point of her rumor spreading, we distanced ourselves from her quite a bit. Her latest antics have been much different. For the sake of this story, her name can be Dee. In our area, cases have been low, so we've started to go out more with the whole gang. Extra precautions aside, things look to be normal. We eat at a semi-formal restaurant, as is our custom. Something about dressing up and treating ourselves is something we try to do as much as we can financially permit. Things seem fine until the bill comes and it's time for each of us to settle up. Dee starts to get shifty and starts tapping at her phone. She stands up quickly and says she needs to go. It's an emergency. She fast walks out of the dining room and out of sight. We try to text and call her, but no answer. We end up all absorbing her part of the bill. A one-time favor for a friend in need, right? The second part of our routine is to go to the host's house, where we drink, watch movies, and have a good time. Kelly was to be the host this time. We're not much for gossip, but Dee's old behavior mixed with her previous antics got us on the topic. All 6 of us shared some stories, and it looks like every one of us had some personal run-in with our friend. The second time we all go out to dinner, everything seems well. Dee ordered a lot of mixed drinks and seemed thoroughly tipsy. Foolishly, we believed she would pay her tab this time. Before the waiter could even bring up how we wanted the bill split, Dee excused herself to the bathroom and did not return. We all have jobs, along with scholarships, so thankfully money isn't our primary worry. However, last time's bill paired with Dee's inflated dinner and alcohol tab would set us collectively back about $300. Reluctantly, we paid. Although we didn't see her, it was assumed that she drove home. We rendezvous to the host's place, very annoyed and in no mood to party. Again, Dee refuses our calls and does not open our messages. We busy ourselves by trying to get in touch with some of Dee's other friends. Through the mishmash of conversation, it was revealed that Dee was receiving a stipend from her father that she was saving to buy herself a new Tesla. Not only did she have a job, but she was getting free money from her dad. There was no reason for her to not pay her bills. I guess she thought this way she could get her Tesla faster. We had collectively been fed up with her crap. Since all of us felt burned, we decided to plan some revenge. We knew she had the cash, she just didn't feel obliged to hold her weight. At this point, we were all working up to how entitled she could be. Our sense of loyalty and nostalgia had blinded us for way too long. Today was the day. We decided to go to a very nice restaurant today, about twice the prices of what we would normally do. Dee looked so excited, bless her. We all ate, drank, and had a great time. Dee had ordered many drinks and was again drunk. We were careful not to wait too long or else Dee would dash. So just as dessert was over and the prospect of after-dinner coffee was being thrown around, we all declared that we had a surprise for Dee. Next month is her birthday, so we thought it would be reasonable enough time to use it as an excuse for her to close her eyes. Dee did as she was told and was instructed not to open her eyes until we said so, because the gift takes a minute to set up. We all got up, quietly filed out of the restaurant, and left her there with her eyes closed. Just as we were pulling out of the parking space, we all took one car to save time after our escape. Dee took her own car as usual. We saw Dee running out of the doors, searching wildly for us. She caught sight of the car just as we rolled away. Our phones were blowing up like crazy. Tons of vile messages following the calls. I got to thinking, the bill must have totaled around $700-ish for everyone. We would never have picked this place normally, although the food was very good. The rest of the gang headed to my apartment. About 30 minutes later, we each received a message saying we owed her $738.17, along with a photo of the bill. She had the audacity to include her part of the bill in that amount as well, and judging by the receipt, she gave no tip. Classy. I replied with this message: "Guess you'll have to dip into your Tesla fund. Take an Uber home before you lose your scholarship and your friends, boozer. We know you can afford it." To say she went crazy is an understatement. She went coconuts. She tore us a new one on Twitter, blocked us, then unblocked us to rip us some more, then blocked us again. Now Kelly, who has an alternate Snapchat account, is treating us to her near-psychotic rants talking about fake jerks who never did anything for her. I guess that's us. Maybe next time she'll learn to pay for herself like an adult. Have you ever had someone expect you to pay for their food? If so, what did you do about it? Please let us know. Entitled Mom ends my engagement and gets me banned from the Steakhouse. Oh my gosh, so glad I found this sub. Here we go. I can finally air my frustration about the night my engagement was single-handedly corrupted by my entitled mother-in-law. Let's call her Ellen, because she always reminded me of Ellen DeGeneres. Okay, so my girlfriend and I were really engaged to be engaged. We had both agreed we wanted to get married, but I hadn't done the formal proposal yet because we wanted to meet each other's families first. Neither lived nearby. I always thought the old trope about meeting the in-laws being a big fiasco was a myth, both because I was younger and more naive then, and because I'm lucky to have easy parents. My girlfriend met them for a few hours. Once we were alone, just me and them, I told them my intentions, and my mom asked, "Does she have any kids already?" And my dad asked, "Does she have a good solid job?" And they both asked, "You really love her?" And that was that. I had their full support for the marriage. I thought meeting her parents would be the same. Some grilling was to be expected, but as long as I was honest and respectful, it would all be fine. Relevant fact, they had my girlfriend when they were teenagers, by surprise, so now had a do-over daughter, their words, not mine, who was only 6. My girlfriend and I made the trip up to their city, and I met them for the first time over a dinner at a steakhouse. It was pretty upscale, and we had scheduled the dinner for 8 p.m., so I was surprised to see they had brought the kid along with them. I met everyone at once, and the initial awkwardness settled once we had sat down. We were making great small talk when the 6-year-old said she was thirsty. No big deal, right? Well, all of a sudden, Ellen starts screaming, "Water! Water! Water!" A waiter came rushing over to see what the commotion was, and without even making eye contact with the poor guy, Ellen went, "We've been here forever, and no one's even gotten us any water. My daughter's been asking." We had been sitting for about 15 or 20 minutes without service, but they were visibly behind, and there were no circumstances that would have warranted that shouting. I should have realized from how unfazed everyone else at the table was that I should be bracing myself for a long night, but I couldn't imagine what was to come at that point. The waiter rushed over with water and apologized for the delay, explaining a few very large parties had arrived all at once. The guy seemed sincere and quite affable, so I thought the water would just be an anomaly in an otherwise pleasant night. Then Ellen kicked into full gear. "We'll need a kids menu," she informed the waiter. He said that they didn't have a kids menu, but that the chef could simplify most dishes. "What do you mean you don't have a kids menu?" Ellen replied in total disbelief, as though he had said they didn't have a fire exit. He explained that they didn't get too many kids there, and that there were enough plain foods on the menu that no separate menu had ever been necessary. Ellen sighed dramatically and waved him away. Literally, without saying a word, waved him off from the table. I tried to give him an apologetic glance, but understandably, he didn't look back our way. I was so glad the poor guy left and didn't have to be subjected to her anymore. Meanwhile, she turned her attention on me, and I almost wish he had come back. At least he was getting paid to be there. She was like, "So, you're a screenwriter?" And I explained, "Well, yes and no. I want to be, but it's hard to get a job in that field that you can support yourself on, so I'm working at a nonprofit right now. There's a screenwriting component to the job though, so I'm really happy there." Ellen turned to her 6-year-old and went, "Hear that, hun? You want to be sure to snag a man who works for profit. Learn from this. It's not too late for you." I couldn't tell if she was trying to be funny or not, so I just let it pass, looking over to my girlfriend to see if she was even considering speaking up on my behalf. Nope. The waiter came back, visibly nervous. That hurt because he was so relaxed and personable at the start of the meal. He asked if we'd like to hear the specials before we ordered, and Ellen said sure. Here's how that went. Waiter: first, we have a lightly seared strip steak. Ellen: next. Waiter: oh, okay. Then we have a broiled leg of grass-fed. Next. Oh, okay. We have a pasta primavera mixed with. Next. And on until he had gone through all 7 or 10 specials, even though she ultimately ordered off the menu a plain ribeye. Well done. She tried to order her daughter the same, but the kid said she just wanted plain mashed potatoes, so Ellen let her get mashed potatoes alone for dinner. Then she sent the waiter away. The rest of us hadn't even ordered yet, and everyone else just sat there like it was entirely normal. I waited for someone to say something, thinking it was more her older daughter, my girlfriend's place, or her husband's, but when no one did, I couldn't help myself. Was the one steak and potatoes going to be for all of us? Or, my girlfriend explained, in the tone you'd use for a tourist violating a sacred local taboo. My mom always has the waiter put the kids' food in first, so it can get started right away. We'll order once the kitchen has hers. I thought she was joking, since Ellen didn't just order her kids' food, she also ordered her own dinner too. So I laughed. Something funny? Ellen asked. Then I realized she was serious, and I shut up. Thankfully, her dad at least recognized that what was normal for them might not be as regular to me and tried to lighten the mood with a change of topic. But not even 10 minutes after we had ordered, I guess technically 5 minutes after we had ordered, 10 minutes after she and her daughter had ordered, Ellen started in again. Another table that had been there long before we were got a side order of mashed potatoes with their meal. Ellen threw a total conniption. She was sputtering so inaudibly that none of us could figure out what was wrong at first. Finally, she managed to flag down some busboy who barely spoke English and began laying into him like he had just sideswiped her on the freeway. He kept trying to explain he wasn't a server and he could go get one, but she wouldn't stop to breathe long enough for him to find someone who could actually help. All the while, I kept looking at my girlfriend for signs of embarrassment, or at the very least irritation, but you wouldn't have known if she was even hearing any of this. Our waiter came over, somehow still feigning a smile despite knowing what he was walking into, and Ellen actually goes, "Why did that table get mashed potatoes and ours haven't come yet?" The waiter kindly but concisely explained, "Well, ma'am, those people ordered potatoes before your party had placed their order." Ellen looks this man dead in the eye, finally, and says, "Well, it doesn't matter when they ordered it. My daughter is the youngest one here. Her food should come out first." You could tell the waiter was working hard to restrain himself at this point. He explained it was a first-come, first-served policy, and age didn't help one way or the other. He offered to go check on the potatoes. Ellen agreed, and more specifically she said, "Yeah, you better." But I was clocking him, and he went right back to his server station because we had only just ordered a few minutes ago. 3 or 5 more minutes passed, during which we could have no other discussion at the table except how awful this restaurant was, how hungry the poor baby was, who hadn't said a word about being hungry this whole time and was contently playing her loud iPad game without headphones, disturbing all of the other diners around us, and how America has lost all respect for motherhood because it's just a me culture now. I chimed in. "I'm with you on that last part." And to my utter shock, instead of laughing at my joke, my girlfriend seemed annoyed with me. So after a few minutes, the waiter comes back and says the potatoes will be out very soon. Ellen then goes and does something that, again, I thought was just a myth. She took 3 singles and a 5 out of her wallet and put them on the table in full view of the waiter. Then she took 1 single away and said, "Every table I see getting potatoes before us is a bill gone." I was absolutely mortified. The waiter, to his unending credit, just took a deep breath and said, "I don't have control over the order in which the kitchen fires tickets, but what I can tell you is it should be out any minute," and left without saying anything disparaging. I had been holding my tongue all night as well in the name of my relationship, but once the tip hit the table, the $8 tip for a $100+ bill, on top of all else, I figured if my girlfriend was half the woman I thought she was, then she wouldn't mind me speaking up at this point. If anything, she'd be supportive, right? So I scooted my chair back a bit and said, "Listen, I know what you're doing with the cash on the table, but that kind of thing makes me really uncomfortable, and it's just not called for. Please put the money away, or we can just continue this some other time." My girlfriend's dad spits back, "What? How cheap do you have to be to not believe in tipping service workers? Before I could process whether he was serious or yanking my chain, Ellen shocked me with, "No, you know what? You're right. This isn't necessary." I should have known better than to be relieved. She folded the bills back into her wallet, patiently waited for the next plate of mashed potatoes to be carried out, and when it wasn't delivered to us, it was a very common side dish at this place, a steakhouse, she went right up to a stranger's table and picked it up off of their table. She half explained something about her daughter starving as she was walking away with the stranger's food, but unsurprisingly, that wasn't convincing enough for them. The old lady she took it from followed right behind her over to our table and tried to take it back. I was already searching for my coat tag in preparation to go, but a shoving match was beginning to unfold between Ellen and an elderly woman with a tennis ball walker, and far be it from me to sit through all that happening only to leave just as the night was getting interesting. The elderly woman was like, "Give me back my potatoes! Who are you?" And the poor girl was like, "Mommy, it's okay. Don't take someone else's potatoes." But it all fell on deaf ears. Ellen yelled at the old lady, "How could you just sit there and eat those when my daughter hasn't even been served yet? She's sitting here hungry, and you're over there stuffing your face. Come on, other potatoes will be out any minute." And the old lady, gotta love her, was like, "Great, if they'll be out any minute, then what's the darn problem?" To which Ellen still found her holier-than-thou ground, gasping, "Language, please." Finally, the waiter, and this time someone higher up as well, I think the manager, thank God, came over to separate them as they had begun to raise their voices and cause a disturbance. Staff had already asked Ellen to turn down her daughter's iPad multiple times without heed, and I'm guessing the waiter informed management about the tip on the table stunt she pulled because this was their final straw. They told us we were going to have to leave the restaurant. "But we don't have our food yet," Ellen complained at the guy. This was clearly not the manager's first rodeo. "You can take the food that's already been served free of charge. Everything else will be canceled. Please leave immediately." The old lady didn't miss her chance to knock the potatoes right onto the floor so we couldn't try to take them with us. Nothing else had been served yet, so we had to leave without any food. When my girlfriend and I were finally alone in our car, she said, "Can you believe that?" And I said, "Not at all. And I really can't believe you didn't warn me." And she went, "How could I have known about any of that?" And confused, I asked, "Is she not usually like that?" Even more confused than me, my girlfriend asked, "Who? Your mom?" What's my mom got to do with the terrible service at the place? That was the beginning of the end of our relationship. The fact she didn't see anything wrong with her mom's behavior and that I'd be marrying into that situation shook me too deep. We both dodged a bullet in more ways than one. In hindsight, we weren't right for each other, regardless of who her family was. Her mom saved us both a lot of time and heartache, helping me realize in one night what would have probably taken us years otherwise. Within a month, we had moved into separate apartments and gone on a break that ended up lasting forever. I'm not sorry I won't see you again, Ellen. I am sorry any waitstaff ever will, though. Would you still marry someone if you found out that their mother acted like this? Or not? Please let us know. I hope they left a horrible Yelp review. Help destroy my trust in humanity? I put you on the news. Once upon a time, I, almost 49, female, had an extremely close friend, Mindy. Heck, she was not just my friend, she was like a sister. We met in grade school. She pursued my friendship, always tried to sit next to me, always wanting to talk. Over the years, we would spend lots of time at each other's houses, but by the time we were 19, my house was our meeting place because she had extremely bad family trouble. My parents kind of informally took her in because they sympathized with her situation. I always tried to make her feel like she belonged and avoided luxurious stuff if she could not afford it. Expensive shows, nice clothes she might like but could not wear. Other times, I just gave her some stuff from my closet. She was nice, outspoken, and made me feel like I had the most loyal friend on the planet. The years go by. I'm fresh out of college and got a nice job. Mindy's life has improved. She had her own place and a 9-to-5, very reliable job. By then, we had a group of friends, all young professionals trying to make our way. I remember that time in my life as bittersweet. We would often reminisce on our college days, and because this happened in the 90s, there were no social networks, no texting. If you wanted to get in touch, you had to exchange phone numbers or emails. Now it's fairly easier. So exchanging old stories glued us together as we wondered how things worked out for friends we may never see again. Gatherings and get-togethers happened in my apartment. I loved that place. It was spacious, still half empty because I was careful not to throw too much money into decoration. Around those days, Mindy began to look sickly and quite not herself. I was worried and loved her to death. She had been there for me, especially when my fiancé broke up with me for no reason. I guess we now call it ghosting. He was the first man I ever truly loved. I was never able to get him to express his love like I did, but I accepted him for who he was. He had some cold stages, which left me wanting, but I thought I could manage. Basically, I was settling for being breadcrumbed. He was gorgeous, successful, and protective, so when he proposed, I was on cloud 9 and decided to ignore the negatives. I had saved a lot of money for our wedding. To be fair, he did the same in a separate banking account. Things came to an end when all of a sudden he broke up with me. He told me he did not want to get married and did not love me nor wanted any type of relationship. He let me keep the money from our joint account plus some of his things at the apartment, workout bench, clothing, pretty much everything. This had a bad effect on me. I felt like he despised me and wanted to cut ties no matter the cost. Invitations had not been issued, so calling off the engagement was not such an ordeal. Mindy was there for me, listening to my pain, my rants, and endless sobbing. I lost so much weight, I was embarrassed to be seen out on the street. She had a boyfriend, George, and he was awesome about letting me crash at their place whenever anguish and pain hit me hard. They both cut ties with my ex. I had made so many life-altering decisions for him, only to be left in the dark. Mindy and George sat me down and disclosed that my ex was seeing someone else. I remember the shock and emotional pain. My heart was racing, and I ran to the bathroom because the bad news made me throw up. I never understood how my ex treated me like that. That Christmas was so bad. I would sit in my living room staring at the wall. Mindy and George had helped me set up a very 90s-looking Xmas tree to cheer me up. Only white lights, a few golden ornaments, and natural pine. I was so depressed, the tree stayed put until next spring. By summer, Mindy broke some devastating news. She was very ill. I was so angry. She didn't deserve this. Her diagnosis was grim. So bad that George proposed earlier than he had planned because he wanted to live in the moment. She had always dreamed of a huge wedding. It was her obsession. We would go into bridal shops and try as many dresses as possible when we were teenagers. The wedding of her dreams was now out of the question. Her family would not pitch in. She had left their home on very bad terms, and George could not pay it on his own. George was now barely out of medical school and up to his neck in debt. I decided to pay for her wedding. It would be a very small event, but I would make sure the decorations and her dress were as dreamy as she had always wanted. I still had the money I had saved for my wedding, and as financially risky or stupid as it may have sounded back then, I was sure those final days with Mindy would be worth gold when she was gone. Her illness made me realize that there are worse things in this life other than being unceremoniously dumped by my ex. I threw myself into it. I was also happy and hopeful as Mindy was able to get her chemo sessions by herself without becoming too sick. She also looked much better than the other patients. Our group of friends also helped her a lot. There was not a day when someone would not bring her groceries or help pay for a random utility bill as she was now out of work. I had initially offered to help her set up a better health insurance plan, but she declined. Pay attention to this, more on this later. So I decided not to intrude and give her the fairy tale wedding, or as close to it that I could, that she wanted. She had picked a nice rental dress and tiara. The florist was to accommodate her taste and create an indoor garden. The venue would be my apartment. The baker had been retained for a 6-tier wedding cake. There would be 35 people, with tables, an aisle, and a musician to play some music. We could not do the loud disc jockey thing. Now, back to the insurance issue. My first job was as a junior sales executive for a health insurance company. There was a legal dispute against another insurer, and I was called in by the court to be a witness. As I was getting cleared to enter the building, I saw my ex. My stomach churned. I immediately thought, courtroom wedding. By the time I reached for the elevator, he had already vanished. That messed up my day. I relived the lack of closure all over again. I could not let it go. I contacted a good friend who I knew was doing her law internship at the court district. She helped me by checking any legal records regarding my ex. No court wedding. I was relieved. I know it sounds silly, but there was a fraud claim, and he was the plaintiff. I didn't make much of it, but it was strange. He was very smart, and getting scammed out of his money sounded too uncharacteristic. I still wanted to help Mindy and tried to set her up with a good insurance plan. I knew it was difficult, given that companies treated patients like her as money-dumping risks. I pleaded with my old boss and he searched her name, but she was not in the company database. Maybe she was using a different insurer, but that was odd because she clearly told me what her insurance company was. I felt guilty because I kind of was snooping. Things were normal for a month until my friend at the courthouse broke some disgusting news. The defendant in my ex's lawsuit was my best friend, Mindy. She asked me if I knew anything about it. I had no idea or clue. She then disclosed that the case had become popular gossip among courtroom clerks because my ex had fallen for a complicated Cupid scam. As it turned out, Mindy and my ex had an affair behind George's back and mine. It spanned a full year, and she was not out of work. She had been fired for embezzlement and larceny, stealing from an employer. I did know that she kept moving apartments, but I thought she had been trying to save on rent, so she had kept looking for cheaper and cheaper places. She moved around towns in the same city. First, she took my ex's money for some investment, and she used her former employer's credibility for it. Never got too many details. Then she got him to help her with medical bills and scammed him out of close to $20,000. Her illness was fake. I avoided her for a week. I hired a private investigator to help me get whatever I could without much hope as their affair had ended. The investigator managed to help me get some closure. His name was on her lease for a small studio. Everyone in the building thought they were a couple. It was their love nest, and it was 2 hours away. I never suspected anything, but apparently he had been lying to me about his actual working hours. He had also helped cover for her car payment at least 6 times in a year. She had my ex as her sugar daddy. She had seen me cry, puke, curl on my bed, and had broken the news that he had someone else, herself. My ex seemed salty over the fact that she had chosen to stick with George. It was simple math. My ex was very successful, but George, although not wealthy yet, had become a physician and was spoken for to start a small practice with a potential partner. She upped and left and cheated him out of money along the way. Apparently, my ex figured out she had been lying about her condition. The disgust, pain, and disappointment hit me fairly hard, but somehow I had so heavily invested myself into helping her that I had emptied myself of any potential nerve-wracking reaction. I was numb. I went straight to all the wedding vendors and canceled before it was too late to get my money back. I defunded her wedding. No cake, no dress, and no veil. I sat down with George on a Friday afternoon and offered him all evidence and proof. He cried, but at the end admitted to feel painfully relieved. Yes, he loved her, but he had felt pressured to get married. He confessed to many red flags. She always went to her medical appointments by herself and became irritated if he asked too many questions. She had shown him some test results that were incredibly well crafted, but now knowing what she had done, he thought the medical documents could be fake. He confirmed the sneaky way, having his nurse, ex-roommate, run her name in the computer at where she claimed to be her doctor's office. It was logical on her part, as back then a fairly small town had only one oncologist. We also suspected that she may have been having a new affair, as she spent more and more weekends with her all-girls church camping group. She claimed it was her sanctuary and helped her a lot. It may have been a front. George and I accepted the fact that we had been cheated, taken advantage of, and emotionally destroyed by the same person. I personally felt a loss of innocence. Now I understood why she wanted to keep her wedding thing almost a secret. It may have been impossible that making it public may have blown her cover one way or the other. George and I decided to do what was right. I paid for a video tribute to my loyal friend and decided to send it to the local news as a heartwarming story of love and healing. It featured her in George's apartment compound on purpose so that everyone wanting to serve her court papers could find her. I did not want to see her, and I made up excuses, but George had a hard time feigning happiness once she had returned from her camping trip. It was an agonizing week. The news wasn't showing our positive note yet, and we were sick with the waiting. It all blew up on Tuesday morning. The news channel enthusiastically showcased our story with a collage and lots of information about her and how she was about to get married and had almost already beaten cancer. Dozens of ill-spoken haters popped up from out of nowhere. As it turns out, this had been her second illness story. I never knew someone so close to me could lead such a scummy double life. My ex went straight to the channel and was interviewed. Oh man, it was pathetic. He poured his heart out about how crazy in love he had been and how she had only used him. I think by then he did not care if all our friends and families found out what he had done. George confronted her with all of the information. She denied it, then said it was a lapse of bad judgment. She moved out without too much drama. It took George over a decade to forgive himself for allowing someone to make him look so stupid as a person and as a physician. She left me some voicemails with lots of excuses. I picked up the phone only once and told her I had defunded and pulverized her wedding and that it was me who told George what was going on. I used a leveled voice to tell her to never call me again unless she wanted to find out how far I would go to see her pay for her unlawful actions. I cried immediately after I hung up. It was so surreal. George and I slowly found normality, but it took some time. He dated a couple of girls here and there, but was not ready. I myself became shut down. She avoided jail, I don't know how, even when our mutual friends filed petty claims for all of the money they invested buying her stuff while she carried on her false pretenses. Eventually, I used the wedding money to partner with George and we opened a small clinic. Best decision ever. Over the years, George and I became best friends and grew closer. We got married some years ago and are proud parents to a happy family. Fun fact, I got a Facebook message from her 7 years ago. She began very sweetly, but then proceeded to blame me and accused me of stealing her man and her life. I blocked her. Fun fact too, I ran into my ex in 2001. He apologized profusely. I accepted his apology and told him it all worked out as I now have a life with someone who truly deserves me. Back then, George and I had begun dating. Fun fact 3, Mindy avoided doing time for her deeds back then, but was prosecuted eventually for more fraud. Am I the jerk for asking my girlfriend to pay for my new prosthetic leg? I, male 24, was in an accident around 2 years ago that resulted in losing my left leg. I thought that would be the end of my active lifestyle. I loved all kinds of sports as a kid and still do. I had a very hard time adjusting to my new normal. My parents were able to get me a prosthetic leg that allowed me to get back to running and going on trips with my friends like we always did every summer. The guys were planning an RV trip on the weekend. We had already chosen a destination, which was spending some time out in nature and a getaway from stress. My girlfriend asked if she could come along. I told her no, this is a guy's trip. Told her all my buddies' girlfriends wanted to go, but they were firm and put their foot down. She laughed at me for this, then tried to convince me to let her come because she was stressed out from being at home 24 hours a day. I already made up my mind. I wasn't going to ruin the trip just because she wants to be on a guy's trip. I promised her a trip when I got back. She got upset and didn't like the idea. Later on, before I went to sleep, I took my prosthesis off as I do every night. This is my second prosthesis. I've already completed a wearing schedule during first year and had to get another prosthesis to accommodate any physical changes I had. I woke up in the morning and I couldn't find my prosthesis. I looked where I put it, but it was gone. I asked my girlfriend, who was doing heavy cleaning around the place, and she said she didn't see it. I was confused that it wasn't near my bed. I asked her to stop being childish and playing games and give me back my prosthesis because I know she took it. She's a bad liar and couldn't even deny it. She said she wanted to hide it so that I won't go on that trip and leave her alone. I got mad at her for this. I was stunned to find my prosthesis hidden underneath an auto part in the garage. It had been damaged. It was placed in a position where it had cracked. It was obvious it no longer functions properly. I mean, I could still wear it, but couldn't put my whole weight on it because it would break. I yelled at her and showed her what she did. She said she didn't mean it. I told her she did mean it because she was being childish and jealous over a trip, and now she caused me $7,000 worth of damage. I told her she ruined everything, that she owed me a new one, and that she needed to pay for a new one. She got mad and left. I basically had to use my old crutches, and it felt absolutely horrible. I called the guys and told them I wasn't coming. It's been a few days. She's mad that I'm still asking her to pay for a new prosthesis and called me a jerk for not apologizing and preferring a plastic leg over her. I had to call my parents today to tell them, and they told me she should at least help pay half of the expenses for a new prosthesis since she caused damage to it, and then consider my relationship with her. Have I been a jerk to her? Edit. For those asking about where I am, I'm in Asia, from the Philippines. Well, what do you think? Should OP's girlfriend pay for his new prosthesis or not? Please let us know. And huge shout out to Diana, our newest official channel member. Thank you so much for supporting the channel. Join as a channel member today and we'll give you a special shout out on our next video. And to have us make any kind of video you'd like us to, come visit us on Fiverr. Link pinned in the comments below.